Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on integration between Workday and Epic. My name is Amy Farrow. I'm the marketing manager at Avaap. Before we get started, I just want to encourage everyone to submit questions. Feel free to submit them at any time using the Q&A box in your Zoom window, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can at the end. There is a brief survey following this session, and I would appreciate everyone taking a minute to answer those questions and let us know what content you'd be interested in the future. And just so everyone knows, an on-demand version of today's webinar will be available on our website in approximately 2 business days, and everyone on today's call will receive an email with a link to that on-demand version. And with that, we can hop into today's agenda. So first, we'll do a quick introduction of who Avaap is and how we help healthcare organizations, as well as some background on our Workday and Epic experts with us today. They'll be covering why integration between Workday and Epic matters and how to create a unified data model, as well as breaking down the silos between Workday and Epic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Overschlake, the Vice President of Healthcare at Avaap.
Thanks, Amy. So again, as Amy said, my name is Tim Overschlake. I'm the Vice President of Healthcare here at Avaap. I'm not the key presenter today. We actually have assembled a really great team for you to hear from them directly, and they will be introducing themselves shortly. What I wanted to do was give you a quick overview of Avaap before we get started. So this is our very short commercial about Avaap and who we are. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. When you look at Avaap, we've been in healthcare since our inception back in 2005. Historically, 80% of our business has been in the healthcare market, and the bottom line is we've really grown up in this industry, so to speak. So again, what you hear today are going to be experts from our teams, and really it's something that I think you'll see the expertise we bring to the market with our knowledge of both ERP systems and also EHR systems as well. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This is just some of our healthcare clients. And again, we've done over 165 ERP implementations out there since our inceptions in healthcare. So we're quite adept at this. And we've also been in the EHR space for years, primarily with Epic, but we also have some Cerner experience, et cetera. You're going to see there's a lot of capabilities that we have as an organization. Some of that will come out in the discussion today, but I did want to highlight there's other things we do that are complementary to what we're going to hearing today, such as BI and analytics, such as organizational change management, such as transformational services. Again, we will not go into all that today, but I did want to highlight a little bit of who we are and how we bring value to our clients. So without further ado, what I like to do is on the next slide, have our consultants go ahead and introduce themselves and start the show, so to speak. Hope you enjoy the discussion.
Hello, my name is Scott Smith. I am a financial solutions architect here at Avaap. I bring 20 years of PeopleSoft experience, 10 years of healthcare experience, 4+ years in the Workday environment. And I also have 5 years of Arthur Andersen and Andersen consulting experience way back when. Adam?
Hi, I'm Adam Gray. My background actually is in healthcare. Originated as a nurse in the OR, moved into Epic configuration consulting, and now into Workday configuration consulting. I've been doing EHR and ERP integrations for the last 10 years. Worked at several clients on the East Coast, Northeast, and on the West.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining from today. My name is Tricia McKinney, and I'm a supply chain architect and consulting manager here at Avaap. I have over 9 years in the Workday ecosystem, both as a customer and a consultant. And as a consultant, a majority of my customers have been in the healthcare industry. I also have been a inventory product lead at Workday for the past 3 years. Nicole?
Yeah, thanks, Trisha. So I'm Nicole Ranieri. I'm a principal consultant at Avaap. My background is in Epic professional billing, where I worked for 5 years and specialized in the PB general ledger. Since then, I've been consulting for healthcare organizations to assist with Epic billing build and maintenance. And more recently, I've expanded my experience and breadth of knowledge into Workday with a Workday finance certification and assisting customers with their Epic to Workday billing integrations. To kick things off today, we're going to spend a few moments talking about why Workday and Epic integration matters and why it's different from the other integrations you'll implement. The first thing that makes the Epic and Workday integration so special is the data living in each system is equally important to a healthcare organization. We like to say that the EHR is the heart of an organization and the ERP is the brain. They need each other to function properly, and both are critical to your operations. What connects the two systems is a unified data model. We'll dive into what that means a little later, but the key takeaway here is that the heart and the brain need constant and consistent communication with each other to function appropriately and to their fullest potential. The second thing that makes the Epic and Workday integration unique is there can be multiple touch points between the two systems. So it's not just one integration that needs to be considered. Data can flow to and from Epic and Workday, allowing the systems and the information they contain to remain in sync. Supply information will be sent to Epic to be used for supplies and eventually charges billed to the patient. Depletion information will then be sent back to Workday for inventory management. Charges, payments, and adjustment transaction activity will flow from Epic to Workday via general ledger feed and then used for financial reporting. And then patient refunds will not only be sent from Epic to Workday for check processing, but the check information will then be sent back to Epic to appropriately debit AR and be stored as part of the transaction's history on the guarantor account to provide transparency for customer service should the patient call and ask about their refund. Various statistics like patient days, deliveries, and RVUs can also be sent from Epic to Workday, where they can be combined with other metrics to provide that holistic view of your healthcare organization. And then there's also the opportunity to connect staffing and provider information between Epic and Workday. By syncing provider information like MPI, you can better track things like provider payroll to revenue. At the end of the day, I think we can all agree that the patient and their well-being is the priority. By fully integrating Epic and Workday with a unified data model, you are letting the system work for you and the patient. So now I'm going to pass it on to Scott to dive deeper into what we mean by a unified data model.
Thank you, Nicole. Actionable data is really critical to the management of today's healthcare systems. Workday financial, HCM, and payroll data and Epic's HB and PB data represent the core systems of that data lake. Developing a coordinated, unified data model allows for easier integration, plus a more functional, accurate, and easier to use data analytic layer. This starts with understanding how information is used and the audiences consuming that data. Avaap extends Workday's foundational data model to include core systems like Epic when determining key reporting elements. Aligning Epic HB's DEP record and Epic PB's bill areas and DEP records with Workday cost centers is one example of this alignment. Other analysis includes timekeeping systems like Kronos and ADP, so that data from all the systems can be joined in analytic systems like Prism, Axiom, Strata, Premier, or even Caboodle. We align budget and actual data to provide clear insights on how operations are differing from plan. When properly designed, users can provide most of their own analysis, but when needed, they can easily transition into other systems using those same data element values to do additional insights and investigation. A solid alignment up front and across systems also minimizes transformational mapping efforts for data analytics so that marrying that data in later efforts at the data analytic layer are much easier. Again, our hope here is, as we transition into the next slide, we are trying to provide a meaningful first cut variance analysis within the general ledger, allow for our users to do easier second cut analysis by using those same values in their budgeting, payroll, and Epic systems, and provide a easier data analytic layer to occur. Workday implementations tend to focus on higher level company balance sheet and income statements and regulatory reporting such as tax reporting. However, Avaap recognizes that the action is really in operational reporting, which marries actual budget and statistical data, and that is what drives the organization. We deliver tools such as Workday landing pages, dashboards, and custom reporting that live within the Workday ecosphere, but are also comfortable integrating with tools such as Prism, Axiom, Strata, or Premier. Workday's Accounting Center also promises some exciting possibilities in bringing detailed, drillable Epic transactional data into the Workday reporting sphere. This could potentially reduce additional reporting systems. The FDM really, the unified data model extends the FDM so it balances the reporting needs and maximizes the usefulness of those data elements. And it's not just financial, it includes HCM, payroll, and even Epic and Kronos, as I mentioned, or ADP. Next slide. Through the unified data model, elements of the accounting and financial transactions can automatically be aligned with other systems' data dimensions. Appreciating how Workday's work tags interact with healthcare's other mission-critical systems is imperative to build an overarching unified data model that serves the healthcare system as a whole, rather than just the Workday implementation. To take this a little bit further, Nicole will, on the next slide, will explain this point.
So various Epic data elements and activity can flow directly into the Workday Foundation data model. During an implementation, it's important to have representatives from both Workday and Epic IT teams involved so that the Workday FDM and chart of accounts can be designed with Epic in mind right from the very start. For example, within your Epic general ledger feed, you'll map your Epic facility structure, cost centers and bill areas, adjustment codes, and financial classes to the appropriate work tag and value within Workday. While it's quite common to have a many-to-one relationship between Epic records and a Workday value, if the teams aren't in sync during design and build, a many-to-many or one-to-many relationship could exist, and that's going to require rebuild and potentially complicated logic that's going to be difficult to maintain. If you're already live on Epic and implementing Workday, this means taking a look at your existing structure in Epic and using that to drive the FDM design and how the Workday accounts will be structured. If you're live on Workday and implementing Epic, this means using the Workday FDM to design and structure your Epic system. And if you're already live on both or implementing them at the same time, clear and consistent communication between your Epic, Workday, and finance teams will be key throughout design, build, testing, and beyond. Epic supply information will also map to specific work tags in the FDM. Trisha and Adam will talk shortly on how the supply information will flow from Epic back into Workday to provide that accurate inventory management. But at a high level, what you see here is just a sampling of how your Epic build and activity can flow directly into your Workday FDM, and hopefully gives you an idea of how connected the two systems can be.
It's critical to have a clean item master when Workday and Epic are integrating with one another. The timing of this cleanup would be dependent upon the timeline of your organization, but it should definitely start prior to your Workday kickoff. Starting this prior to your kickoff will be a key to success in your Workday implementation. You also want to take into consideration resource constraints. Those same individuals working on cleaning up your item master will also probably be key players in your Workday project. During the cleanup, you want to make sure that you have the correct people involved. This can include clinicians, buyers, supply chain analysts, technical specialists, members from your finance team, and representatives from any other areas that would have input in managing and even using your item master. It's important to have standardization among all attributes for your item master. Patient charge information, commodity codes, CDM codes, GTINs, and all units of measure are key pieces for Workday to integrate with Epic. All of these attributes should have input from the stakeholders that I just previously mentioned. And lastly, Workday should absolutely be your source of truth for your item master. Workday has the capabilities to handle all of the attributes I just mentioned and more. You can also have the flexibility to create your own attributes based upon your business needs. So in summary, I like to say, put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. If you don't put forth the effort of cleaning up your item master, you will not be able to reap the full benefits of a smooth Workday and Epic integration. All right, so if you're familiar with Workday, you're probably familiar with the touchpoint graphic that you see here. It's obvious that inventory touches multiple functional areas in Workday, from procure to pay, financial accounting, and all the way out to HCM core. And with Workday and Epic, we need to have a dotted line to allow for information to flow between the two applications. All right, so let's start with Workday, since that's our source of truth for our item master. We can see that from Workday to Epic, this is a two-way street. Workday sends to Epic supply information, charge information, perpetual and par locations, as well as down to the shelf and bin level. And Epic can send a message to Workday when an item is planned or used in real time to reflect accurate inventory quantity and value.
In healthcare, it's critical to have the right stuff at the right time. The challenge for supply chain management today lies not only in the acquiring of supplies needed for a patient care, but also improving value, reducing cost, and integrating the critical inputs.
Workday inventory will also have a direct impact on your financial accounting due to cost adjustments, return and disposals, and transactional costing. Clinical data usage is the key enabler in efficient supply chain management.
As you can see, there is a lot of information going back and forth between Workday and Epic, Epic to Workday. The vision is a fully integrated collaborative supply chain when you have full end-to-end visibility to address our biggest challenges. The digital supply chain is the next frontier for organizations to optimize their value chain and financial performance. When moving towards or optimizing integration with Workday and Epic, the vision, as I just stated, is a fully integrated and collaborative supply chain with complete end-to-end visibility to address those personalized health management challenges. But we undoubtedly need that unified data model that produces actionable data. Quality, quantity, frequency, and data governance are all keys to streamlining clinical, business, and financial data. One of the biggest mistakes organizations make in modernizing their supply chain is layering the latest digital tools onto the legacy operational processes. Instead, they should be bold, reimagine their item master that is scalable and customer-centric. First, start with identifying your source of truth of Workday. Next, accelerate your item master data accuracy and completeness during a project's phase 0. Ensure organizational change management principles to determine the level of granularity for your data and implement with the end in mind. Then you can enable data integration, automation, and real-time inventory transactions, and balances. Finally, encourage communication between stakeholders. Establish a joint change control process between Epic and Workday teams. This ensures having the right supply at the right time, at the right cost to ensure the right outcome. As your organization grows, build confidence in that single source of truth to allow other areas to build upon that data, that actionable data. It becomes information. You can grow, you can go to your chief medical officer, your chief quality officer, or even your chief financial officer and say, hey, the supply data shows us that there's improved clinical outcomes by evidence of reduction of length of stay, less time in the OR, fewer readmissions, and fewer complications. The supply data shows the usage, and if we standardize amongst our surgeons, we can project the usage amount to negotiate better contracts and improve purchasing power. Additionally, a realization of monitoring your goods and operations via a fully integrated system improves real-time sharing of data with your supply chain partners, removing redundant manual tasks, and leveraging Workday and Epic, artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities within to address your biggest planning challenges and improve the overall user experience. Next, we're breaking down the silos. Technology alone isn't enough to fix or transform your Workday and Epic transformations. It is critical to assess the current state of the systems, teams, and stakeholder collaboration, and your maturity level within your organization. Now is the time for healthcare to focus on functions that can deliver better value to the business, clinicians, and patients. It is proven that a highly optimized ERP and EHR can increase financial performance, including lifts in sales and earnings, reductions in costs, and enhancements of the patient journey. We need to rethink the integration from technology perspective alone and focus on organizational change management to improve that data collaboration to break down these silos. In this webinar, we've seen how different systems and teams are integrated. Here we see how this comes together, and a data analyst centrally collects and distributes information. A unified data model helps break down these silos when the data analyst role becomes dynamic. Let's imagine if a data analyst role was a nurse manager in the operating room. With a clean, unified item master, she can quickly determine her department's strengths, gaps, and opportunities for continuous improvements in operational processes, clinical workflows, culture, or even surgical forecasting. For example, supply expenses make up 15% of total hospital expenses on average, but as high as 30 to 40% in hospitals with high case mix index. So simply scanning a barcode to document a supply or implant improves documentation compliancy, staff satisfaction, and workflow efficiencies.
The NPI/provider number is another example of a data element that lives in the Epic financial and HR payroll worlds. As employees are hired, they go through a credentialing process. This information is then passed on to Epic and entered into the SCR employee record. For most physician groups and practices, tracking both billing provider in the Epic PB revenue and in payroll is critical. Avaap works with these silos to ensure the smooth flow of that NPI provider ID throughout this process. This can include putting the employee ID on the SCR record and then creating an interface back into HCM payroll that automatically updates org assignments for those employees. This in turn allows for payroll data to accurately flow into the general ledger and other management reporting tools. This design also allows for a data analytic layer to join Epic and Workday data on the EMPL ID without any ETL mapping, making your overall data model much more agile. From a financial perspective, designing the Epic and HB and PB interfaces, patient refund interfaces, and item master interfaces to provide the proper level of detail for first cut analysis, while allowing for quickly transitioning into Epic for further detailed analysis if needed, is critical for maximizing the operational efficiency of the users of the systems. Building Workday values into report groupers and then building these values into the natural Epic interface allows this to happen more easily as opposed to using mapping tables. Challenging status quo, such as interfacing GL data on a monthly basis or moving detailed Epic data into analytic tools like Prism, not only makes the data more actionable, but lays the framework for redundant system elimination. Examples may be including replacing Strata or Premier and their many interfaces by building fewer interfaces into Workday Prism, where reports can be more easily joined with Epic and Workday data on a platform operational managers and clinicians are already familiar with and using. Most healthcare systems use a mixture of financial, data analytic, and spreadsheets to produce their operational and financial reporting. In many cases, in order to combine Epic financial payroll data under one reporting umbrella, systems such as Axiom, Strata, and Premier are utilized. Avaap is comfortable tightening up this model if our clients wish to use that, but we also are comfortable using Prism and/or Accounting Center to eliminate these systems and bring the reporting into the Workday model. Our industry, Epic, Workday, and technical expertise allow us to drive costs down and improve efficiencies across your analytical system landscape. A common theme that all of us have been talking about today is that accurate and usable data across all of your systems is critical to the operational reporting and decision makers. It is understanding that both Epic and Workday are components of a landscape and not worlds unto themselves. Avaap supports this by extending Workday's foundational data model into a unified data model. This provides the foundation for actionable and agile decision-making for your organization. And now I'm going to hand back to Adam.
So in working with a large Northeast health system, a realization of a highly integrated ERP EHR system and a clinically integrated team with finance stakeholders, they were able to identify significant supply cost savings by merely identifying procedure and service line variances. The administration was able to actually parallel case mix with surgeon RVUs, staff projected utilization, and department budgets to improve labor costs and really facilitate that hiring of additional clinical staff in the OR. Additionally, improved department budget projections to purchase new equipment, and they also implemented lean practices to improve the room layout instructions as well.
Okay, so let's be realistic. Silos are common in healthcare organizations, but those customers that are most successful are able to break them down and minimize implementation risk. Let's recap what we've discussed so your organization can set the stage for a successful and seamless Workday and Epic integration. Establish data governance and consistent and frequent communication between stakeholders to break down those barriers. Standardize your item master with all the key attributes before your Workday kickoff, and ensure that Workday is the source of truth. Include all stakeholders in the design and planning stage, keeping the architecture of a unified data model in mind. Think of how all your applications that need to communicate with one another and what pieces of information need to travel back and forth. Challenge your current practices and be open to new ideas. Make room for process improvement and best practices across your organization. All of these combined will provide your organization to get the biggest benefit out of your Workday and Epic integration?
Thank you, guys. That was a great presentation. I see a few questions came in, but I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, to send them in through the Q&A. And if you're interested in learning more about integrating Workday and Epic at your organization and how your organization can benefit, send us an email at info@avaap.com and let's get the conversation going. Or you can reach out to any of the presenters for today. Let's hop into the first question. How does Avaap integrate their Epic resources into Workday projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll kick that one off. So as an Epic resource and then also part of the Workday practice, Avaap does a really good job of integrating us not only in the projects that we work on, but also in the Workday business line and business unit itself. So we're part of that Workday team. We know what's happening on the floor with all of the other projects that we're working on, not just the one that we're specifically staffed to. And then the projects that we're staffed to, we're, again, part of the team. We're part of those conversations. When we're working with customers that are maybe already live on Epic and they're implementing Workday, we're part of those FDM design sessions. I'm on the calls with finance as they're talking through what they want that structure to be. So I can identify any issues that might be coming up while we're still, as Scott likes to put it, doing paper to pencil. We don't have anything built in the system, so it's easier to change. So we can identify those issues while we're still in the planning phases versus down the road after you've built or tested and then realize that there's an issue. Adam, do you want to add anything?
Nope. I'm good.
Great. Up to the next question. What decisions and/or what key stakeholders should the organization consider when implementing an ERP and EHR at the same time?
I'll take the lead on this, but I think all of us are going to need to jump in at some point on this one. Bringing the finance team and the revenue team together to build the Workday FDM, Epic facility structure, codes, cost centers, the Epic CDM and fee schedule, kind of, again, all components of a unified data model. Bringing those parties together is certainly critical in here. Tricia?
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback off of that, your supply chain team, your clinical teams, they should all be involved when any type of decisions are going to be made that's going to affect your supply chain management. Like we stated in the presentation regarding your item master, we definitely want those people in the room. And they could also help contribute to those key attributes that we talked about regarding what Epic needs and what Workday can handle. So your supply information, any type of implant attributes, also the stocking location. Where does that item sit in your inventory site or in your PAR locations? Adam, Nicole, anything to add?
No, I think you guys did a great job.
I got a few messages that my sound isn't great, so hopefully this helps. How do you handle post-go live optimization from both an operational and Epic technical perspective?
Nicole, I'll give you the first, and then I'll come in over the top of you. And
Right.
then Shan, if you actually are asking more of a procurement supply chain, then we'll have Tricia and Adam jump in.
Yeah, I mean, from a general post go live perspective, so obviously with the optimization, if you're going to be enhancing any of your Epic workflows or whatnot. Sometimes that's just going to be really just in the Epic system, but anything that's going to be touching Workday really needs to pull in the Workday and finance teams to make sure that everything's on the same page. So if you're adding like new AR codes or new bill areas or new cost centers, you have a new adjustment code that needs to be added. That's super quick for your Epic team to just jump in and build, but you really need to think about, okay, what is that going to touch downstream? Why do we need it? How is it going to impact the general ledger? How is it going to impact reporting? And making sure that you're thinking from start to finish and getting those teams involved to make sure that you're not kind of setting them up for failure down the road, and you get to month end and realize you have a bunch of transaction activity that's going to the error pool. So from like a technical perspective, what I see a lot of customers do is kind of setting up a change control process or like a ticket system and including this type of request and having it route to the appropriate parties. So again, somebody asks for a new cost center, it's super easy for that HB team to jump in and build it, but making sure that request is getting routed to the appropriate people that are stakeholders in that decision so that it's built out correctly up front and you're not catching issues down the road.
Right.
Some of the things I've observed, Shannon, we may be in a situation where Epic was implemented in phases by different hospitals within a system. And Epic lends itself to a more centralized business model, but sometimes those hospitals remain decentralized. And Nicole and I have done a lot of account adjustment code consolidation and usage in standardizing the GL mapping across those organizations. So again, good leadership from both the revenue cycle and from the finance is going to be critical as you go through this process.
Yeah, and Scott and Nicole, to kind of bring together what you all were saying, especially Nicole's points about having some type of change control process. That is extremely important for any type of post go live optimization. So this should actually be discussed and determined during your implementation project. So when changes need to occur, your team is ready and knows how to address those changes, whether they be high impact or low impact changes. And the way that you can kind of help define what's a high impact change and what's a low impact change, think of all the different functional areas that change or that enhancement is going to touch, like Nicole said. Think back to those Workday touch points. We have inventory at the center, but we saw it goes all the way out to HCM core, it goes to financial accounting, procure to pay. So all those different functional areas, you want to have those stakeholders that are going to assist and kind of help make that decision of any type of change or optimization after your go live. And for those of you that are already live with Workday, we know that Workday pushes out changes, enhancements, new features and functionality every 6 months. I highly encourage all organizations to make sure that as soon as that preview tenant is open with the new functionality, those new features, make sure you're testing it and testing those integrations, especially when they're going to be touching your EHR system.
And I'll just put a little cherry on top, I suppose. But Epic and Workday integration is going to really change the status quo of supply management in procedural and operating room areas. There is added functionality within Workday that really facilitates the process of obtaining supplies and getting them in a state that they're ready to be used in Epic. That really streamlines this whole process and improves the turnaround time, or what we like to call on the Epic side, the life of the supply. The other thing is patient safety is the utmost concern for the healthcare. Supply chain is starting to really acknowledge that and look for additional attributes that can be included within the supply chain on a master to then in Epic leverage those optimization abilities, the artificial intelligence and machine learning to really improve patient care. So with the potential of optimization that's out there between the two systems, I agree with the team. Change control practices need to be in there, and the stakeholders, revenue, finance, as well as clinical and supply chain folks need to be in a very collaborative state and very integrated to really tackle those optimizations to really improve patient care.
All right, thank you guys. Another question. When it comes to cost centers and the shared cost center numbers across the health system, such as the OR, is always the same cost center, such as the OR is always the same cost center, but the other portion of the general ledger string is location-based. Is it easier to consolidate or to make cost centers unique per hospital?
I'm going to take that answer, and I'm probably not going to give a clear, decisive answer on that. The Workday security model, data security model, requires the cost center to be unique. That way, if I have an OR in one hospital, I cannot see an OR in a different hospital if I'm the OR manager. That said, our favorite approach is to build a combination of the hospital, perhaps a location, because I could have a surgery center in a hospital as well as the regular OR, plus a function. So there's kind of three components happening right here into the cost center number. And then we could use hierarchies within Workday to build a hierarchy over all my OR cost centers. We can also build a hierarchy over that middle piece, the location. So if I had an outpatient center that had all sorts of physician practices and standalone services out there, I can do that sort of reporting. And at the same time, I retain the company specific or the cost center specific security aspects of that. It was an anonymous person that asked the question, but I hope I have answered it. If not, please come back and we could talk some more on it.
Great. How does the implementation strategy change if you're already on either Workday or Epic and now implementing the other system?
So I'll kick this one off. The biggest thing that I see, especially if you're already live on Epic and then implementing Workday, which I think is kind of what we see most frequently, is your Epic system already has the integrations to the ERP system that need to remain in place while you're doing the build for Workday. So you still need to be sending that daily, monthly general ledger feed. Epic's going to contain all of the build that you need for that, but then simultaneously, you need to start building out what you need for the Workday general ledger. So what that means is really thinking through your environment strategy and that cutover strategy. Like, when are you going to be telling finance that we're putting a freeze on any changes to the existing general ledger because we need to migrate stuff over? And then what environment are you going to be working in so that you're not stepping on the toes of the existing, the legacy general ledger build? This also applies to the refund extracts as well. The second thing is, all too often I see Workday or general ERP projects kind of forget about the Epic team. And like we said earlier at the very beginning, it's not just one integration that's happening between Epic and Workday. There's a lot happening, which means like the Epic resources are going to need to have time committed to this project. It's not just something that they can willy-nilly do on the side. So you need to think through, what does that resourcing look like from your Epic team perspective What are the other simultaneous projects do we have going on that might interfere with that Workday project? Do we have an upgrade coming up? Do we have an acquisition that they're building stuff out for? Do we have another wave of hospitals that we're rolling Epic out to? So thinking through kind of that resourcing staffing perspective as part of your Workday planning.
Yeah, and then Nicole, if I can just kind of talk, my whole thing is regarding a nice and clean item master. I'm going to keep stressing that and keep saying that for the rest of this conversation. A clean item master and knowing what Epic needs to function accurately and efficiently is going to be key if you're going to be implementing Workday once you're already live with Epic. And like Nicole said, that is typically the scenario that we see amongst most of our customers, that they already have Epic in place and we're implementing Workday. So yeah, again, you want to know what attributes, what information Epic needs to make sure that those clinicians know where that item is, know how to input it into Epic so that it's used, and then that information can sail on through nice and seamlessly into Workday. So your inventory value and your quantities on hand are accurately reflected based upon your Epic usage.
And one thing to note here is one of the things that Trish and I have done on previous projects is really looked at the timeline for both the implementing software. So not only having that information in place, but accelerating those processes as quickly as possible with the end in mind, and ensuring that the timing of the completeness of that file or the item master is within a time frame that Epic can facilitate charging, test charging, as well as their scuba analysis for that. So a lot of play on when those activities and environments are built and finalized on Workday, as well as considering the length of time that Epic needs for appropriate charge testing as well.
And to that point, and to reinforce one of the things that Nicole said, is your tenant or Epic equivalent management structure makes a lot of sense. Nicole and I were in a situation where most of the hospitals were on Epic and we were implementing Workday, but they were also bringing on one major hospital and into Epic, and that really caused some challenges in the Epic databases and management. So understanding how all these pieces flow together, and there are constraints on how many tenants you have and databases you have.
We have a few more questions here. Can you give an example of building Epic or Workday in a way that makes the integration scalable for future growth?
Yeah, so again, I'll kind of spearhead this one, and then the team can kind of jump in. So what I see happen a lot, because the Epic General Ledger can be this big, scary, complicated thing that the analysts, Epic analysts may or may not fully understand. So if they're going live on Workday after they're already live on Epic, it can seem easier to say, okay, we have our general ledger built, it's working, we feel good about it. Now we have this whole new chart of accounts. Let's just translate kind of outside the Epic system. We had this string and now it's going to be that string. And that will get you live, but that is not the way that Epic is meant to be used, and it's not going to be setting yourself up for success later. The other kind of common issue that I see is kind of hard coding a lot of stuff into your Epic General Ledger build instead of using the system to work for you. And what I mean by that is saying, okay, we have these specific payment codes, these specific adjustment codes, and we write rules and patterns to map it to a specific account. The best way to set yourself up for success is to use the Epic records and kind of map the values there, and then use and dynamically pull that information out of Epic using rules and patterns to kind of compile together what that general ledger feed is going to look like. So really doing the work up front. And then what that means for you down the road is if you have it all dynamically pulling from Epic records, as opposed to using a translation table that you have to manually update every time you have a new account, or have to create like new specific rules every time you add a department. If you're dynamically pulling it from the Epic records themselves, then you can just update that one single record, kind of going back to that one question about what does it look like post go live? Okay, somebody's requesting a new department. Well, part of that department request needs to go to finance to figure out what's going to be that general ledger component of it. And then you just include that as part of the build. And then it just seamlessly kind of flows through with your general ledger feed. So that's what I see work the most successfully. Again, there's more time and effort up front to kind of set that up. And then going back to the previous question about resourcing, making sure that you have those Epic resources available and part of that project planning so that you can do that for the most successful seamless integration.
So kind of to extend on that and add to the earlier question about the cost center, in an HP model, Nicole and I have added a report group onto the DEP record that contains the Workday cost center, and then rebuilt the GL interface to use that report grouper in the actual stamping of that transaction. And now the data, both in Epic and in Workday, carries the Workday cost center, which has all sorts of wonderful possibilities in that unified data model for data analytics. And over on the PB side, that could be a combination of the bill area and the DEP record. We've seen several models on the physician side, but again, building an external mapping table into that interface is your worst possible solution.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things too from what I've seen and done in the past too. But my recommendation too is to leverage the technology. Workday has the ability and the use of API integration. So sending over an appropriate HL7 message directly from Workday into Epic. You can still use middleware, but you want to stay away from, again, creating any kind of mapping tables within any sort of middleware interface applications. It adds another stakeholder into the mix if there's any changes that happens or also issues down the line. It complicates issue resolution. So creating those records and ensuring connection between those record identifiers, both between Workday and Epic, will definitely make your organization more scalable as you grow.
Time for about one or two more questions. We understand that many organizations have implemented Epic in recent years due to mandates from the government. If you had a blank slate and we understand that many organizations have implemented Epic in recent years due to mandates from the government. If you had a blank slate and Epic was not already implemented, would you choose to implement Workday or Epic first?
Yeah, so I'll kind of take a first stab at this one. So when I worked at Epic, what we were seeing was a huge influx of Epic implementations because of meaningful use. So all of these healthcare organizations now had this government mandate that they had X number of years to kind of get up and going and get an electronic medical records system implemented at their healthcare system. So that's where we saw that big influx of Epic installs and just general EHR installs. Well, now what we're seeing is, okay, the hospitals probably have their EHR system in place, may or may not like it, or working well or whatnot, but now we're seeing kind of that facelift on the ERP system and having new installs or moving to cloud, so kind of pulling in those Workday implementations. So from an Epic perspective, if you're kind of debating whether to, which one to do first, I would say one of the biggest struggles I see is if Epic was first, well, you built out your adjustment codes, you built out your bill areas and your cost centers, not really knowing what that end state was going to be. And then you go to implement Workday and okay, sometimes now you're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole because you didn't know what the end goal was going to be. So if you implemented Workday first and you took that time to design that FDM and you know what that end state and what those financials are going to look like and how you want the data to be organized from a reporting perspective and within your foundation data model, well, then if you're implementing Epic, okay, you know what that end goal is going to be and you can kind of determine what that cost center, what that adjustment code system needs to be in alignment with your revenue cycle, obviously, and kind of what the end users need. But you already know what that end goal, that end state will be as you're designing and building out your Epic system. So kind of throwing out a couple of terms. So I know we said FDM a couple of times. So the foundation data model, but if you remember back in the slide deck, when Scott and I were talking, that's the little slot machine where you can have the different components of Workday work tags, and that's kind of where those different data elements are feeding into. So if you know which values you want for the cost center, the clinic work tags, well, then you know what those Epic values need to be to kind of flow them back in. And when I was kind of talking about that slide, talking about where you can end up with a many-to-many or a one-to-many relationship, if Epic's already live and now you're implementing Workday, well, that's where that rework can come in. So if Workday goes first, if you have that opportunity, well, then you can design your Epic system to automatically do a one-to-one relationship or a many-to-one relationship and avoid any of those headaches in the future. Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to add to, one of the biggest key takeaways that I get from any sort of go live is the type of integration and collaboration that happens. So with Epic, it really pulls the clinicians and supply chain into the same room, which may or may not be unique in their situation. So focusing on the item master with Workday in the beginning will help align those organizational change managements to really get those people in the same room and start discussing with that. The added layer in with that is, having help or experts or talent on staff to really help paint that picture of what the end in mind looks like. So that way you can obtain those hurdles and at least identify those early and get those worked out with your Workday implementation.
I would just say go back to the slide that Nicole mapped the Epic functions underneath the data model and looks where the facility structure fit in and the bill areas and the cost centers and all the charge data, and then we had the purchase items in there and the providers. It really does explain how all those touch points interact. And if I were designing from scratch, that's where I would be starting.
Great. Thank you guys so much. You guys had a great presentation. I learned a lot. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope you have a great afternoon.